exchange basics. uh, Basics of bills of exchange. So here we will be learning what is a bills of exchange. Okay, so bills of exchange is an instrument in writing containing an unconditional order signed by the maker directing a certain person to pay a certain amount of money only to or to order of certain person or to the bearer of the instrument. Let's understand this part by part. So bills of exchange is an instrument in writing. So there is some written document. Okay, written document. So what does it contain? It contains an unconditional order. Okay, so it has some unconditional order which is signed by the maker. Okay, so it has some order. Okay, so what is the order? Order is to pay a certain sum of money. Okay, so it has to be a written document. There is an order to pay a certain sum of money, then it is signed by the maker. Okay, and he is the one who is directing or ordering to pay a certain sum of money. To whom? To a particular person, that is to a certain person, or to the bearer of instrument. Okay, so when is this bill of exchange signed? Okay, usually what happens when the goods are sold on credit, the seller would like the purchaser to give some definite promise in writing to pay that amount of money of goods. Okay, the amount or money of that particular goods on a certain date. Now in that case, what will the seller do is that seller will draft a bill of exchange and he'll order the purchaser to make the certain amount payment of the money, and then he'll get it signed by the purchaser. Okay, and to pay it to a certain person or to a bearer of the instrument. Okay, so sometimes what happens is there is a mutual understanding. In order to get the finance, what happens is two parties agree, for example A and B, there is no sale or purchase, but there is a mutual consent and they form a bill of exchange. Okay, just to get a finance. Such type of bills are known as accommodation bill. Okay, now here we will be mainly focusing on a seller and a purchaser. Okay, now let's see one example of how the bill of exchange is drafted. Now this is the example. Mr. V and Sons has sold goods worth rupees 1 lakh to Messrs. Raghav Limited on 1st Jan 2017 on 3 months credit. Mr. V has drafted a bill of exchange on Messrs. Raghav Limited to pay rupees 1 lakh to the bearer on 1st April 2017. So what are the transactions that are taken place? Mr. V has sold goods. Okay, to what? Messrs. Raghav Limited. Okay, sold goods for how much? For rupees 1 lakh. Okay, and for how many? 3 months credit. Okay, now what has happened is Mr. V has drafted a bill of exchange on Mrs. Raghav Limited to pay rupees 1 lakh to the bearer on 1st April 2017. Now let's draft a bill of exchange. Okay, so it will be, the format will be something like this. Then here you will have a stamp. Then here you have place. Okay, now let's assume place as Mumbai. Okay, since nothing is given. Then the date. what is the date? The bill is drawn on 1st Jan 2017. Okay, then the wordings will be 3 months later after the date, pay to Mr. V or bearer of instrument or order the sum of rupees 1 lakh for the goods received. Okay, now this bill, what happens is this bill is signed by Mr. V, then it is accepted by Messrs. Raghav Limited. Okay, so there is Mr. V, then there is Messrs. Raghav Limited. Okay, so if you see, what happens is Mr. V draws the bill, then he'll sign the bill and he'll give it to Messrs. Raghav. Messrs. Raghav will accept this bill. Okay, now if you see, there are 3 parties here. Now Mr. V has drawn the bill, so he is known as the drawer. Okay, now Mr. V has drawn the bill on Messrs. Raghav Limited. So Messrs. Raghav Limited is drawee. Then the third party is a payee. Payee is a person to whom the amount needs to be paid. So in this case it may be Mr. V, or it may be the bearer of the instrument, or any person to whom the amount needs to be paid. Now let's understand what are the benefit that Mr. V and Sons has got by getting this bill of exchange signed. Okay, now this bill of exchange is a legal instrument. Okay, it's a legal document. So if in case Mr. V is in need of money, he can present this bill of exchange to his bank, and what the bank will do is, bank will deduct certain amount of discount on rupees 1 lakh, and then it will pay Mr. V the amount, deducting the discount, that is a net amount, it will pay it to Mr. V immediately. Okay, so it's like receiving a loan against this bill. Okay, now let's see how it works. Now let's see what is discounting of bill of exchange. Okay, so this is a bill of exchange which Mr. V and Sons has got. Okay, so what he'll do is he'll approach his bank, say ABC Bank Limited, and he'll show this bill. Okay, so what will bank do is, bank will see what is the amount of bill. So amount of bill here is 1 lakh. Then the bank will deduct its discounting charges. Okay, so let's say the discounting charges is 5%. Okay, 5% of 1 lakh. So how much does that come to? That comes to 5,000. Correct. So the net amount of 95,000 bank will pay to Mr. V. Okay, so on what date? Say if Mr. B has got the bill signed on 1st Jan, and then he went to his bank on 2nd, so bank will immediately pay him 95,000. Then what will happen is on the due date, that is on, what is the due date now, 1st Jan, 3 months, so 1st Jan, 1st Feb, 1st March, 1st April. So on 1st April, okay, 1st April is the due date. 1st April, the bill will be with the bank. Okay, this bill, it will be with ABC Bank Limited. So what will the bank do? Bank will approach Messrs. Raghav Limited and collect rupees 1 lakh. Okay, so let's see what is the benefit of bills of exchange. Okay, so for Messrs. V and Sons, okay, what has happened is, instead of getting the money after 3 months, okay, instead of waiting for 3 months and getting rupees 1 lakh, the benefit that Mr. V and Sons has got is, it has got the money immediately, although there is some discount. Okay, this discount is nothing but the interest which is charged by the bank. Okay, so it has got the money immediately. Okay, and what is the benefit of the bank? Bank has received 1 lakh and paid 95,000. So it has earned the income or interest income on the bill of exchange. So this is a benefit of the bank. Okay, so this is how the bills are been signed and used for the purpose of financing or discounting. Okay, now let's see what will happen if Messrs. Raghav Limited is unable to pay the amount on 1st April. So consider the same scenario. Now what will happen is, on 1st April, if say Mrs. Raghav, okay, is unable to pay rupees 1 lakh, so what will bank do? Bank will approach Mrs. V and Sons, okay, and demand rupees 1 lakh. Okay, so this is known as bill dishonored by Messrs. Raghav Limited. So V and Sons will have to pay bank rupees 1 lakh, and then it has to recollect it from Messrs. Raghav and Limited. Raghav Limited. Okay, so this is known as dishonoring a bill. Since Messrs. Raghav Limited has dishonored the bill, the bank will collect the money from Messrs. V and Sons, and then subsequently Messrs. V and Sons has to recollect it from Messrs. Raghav Limited. Okay, so what are the following points should be noted for the bills of exchange? It should be in writing. Okay, now let's see the draft here. It should be in writing. Okay, then the bill must be dated. This is very important. The bill must be dated. So there has to be some date on the bill. Okay, if the bill is not dated, we won't know what is the due date of the bill or when the amount needs to be paid. So it has to be dated. Then it must contain an order to pay a certain sum of money. It must contain an order to pay a certain sum of money. Okay, the bill cannot be vague, saying the sum of rupees so and so, or the sum of rupees up to rupees 1 lakh. No, no. It has to be a certain sum of money. That is the exact amount of the bill should be known. Okay, now in this case it's rupees 1 lakh. Then the money must be payable to a definite person, or to his order, or to the bearer of the instrument. Now this money, it should be paid to a definite person. The bill should state that the money has to be paid to whom. So here it has been stated, it has to be paid to Mr. V, or the bearer of the instrument, or order. Order means if Mr. V has ordered that you have to pay the money to a certain person, then it has to be paid to a certain person. So it has to be either paid to Mr. V, or as per the order or instructions of Mr. V, or to the bearer of the instrument. Okay, Then the draft must be accepted for the payment by the party on whom the order is made. Okay, now in this case the order has been made on Messrs. Raghav Limited. So the draft has to be accepted. That is, it has to be signed by the person on whom the order has been made. So these are the points that needs to be considered while drafting a bill of exchange. Okay, so now one more thing is, this bill of exchange can be passed on to the other person by the endorsement. Okay, endorsement means what? That if you say, if Mr. V, he has got this bill of exchange of rupees 1 lakh, and there is some other party, say Messrs. XYZ, okay, to whom rupees 1 lakh is payable. So what will Mr. V do is, Mr. V will endorse this bill of exchange to Messrs. XYZ, and on the due date Messrs. Raghav Limited will pay the amount to Messrs. XYZ instead of Mr. V. Okay, so this is known as the endorsement of a bill of exchange. So this was about the bill of exchange. Now we will see what is a promissory note. Okay, so in case of promissory note is an undertaking. So what happens in case of promissory note is that the buyer, okay, here what has happened in case of bill of exchange, a seller has drawn the bill and buyer has accepted it. In case of promissory note, what happens is, buyer gives a unconditional undertaking, okay, duly signed, saying, I promise to pay a certain amount of money to Mr. so and so date. Okay, so that is a difference. Okay, now here the drawer is a seller. In case of promissory note, the bill is drawn by the buyer and he has signed it. Okay, now let's see one example of a promissory note. So for the same example, we'll prepare a promissory note. Again, place, date. So date was 1st Jan 2017. Okay, so then again stamp, and then amount was how much? Rupees 1 lakh. Okay, I promise to pay rupees 1 lakh only to Mr. V and Sons, or bearer, or to the order. Okay, after 3 months from the date of note. Okay, and then Messrs. Raghav Limited has to sign and send it to Mr. V and Sons. Okay, so this is a format of the promissory note. Now the promissory note also, there are certain points which needs to be noted. First is, it must be in writing, then it must contain a clear promise to pay. Okay, so there has to be a clear promise that I promise to pay. Okay, that has to be the wording. Okay, mere acknowledgement of the debt is not a promissory note. Then the promise to pay must be unconditional. Okay, so it has to be, I promise to pay rupees 1 lakh on so and so date. Okay, the bill cannot be like, I promise to pay rupees 1 lakh as soon as possible. No, it has to be on a specific date. Okay, then the promisor or maker has to sign the bill. In this case, it's Messrs. Raghav Limited, so he has to sign the bill. Okay, it has to be a certain person. The maker has to be a certain person. Then the payee or the person to whom the payment is promised has to be a certain person. Okay, so it has, in this case it is either Mr. V or son or to the bearer. Okay, then the sum that is payable must be certain. Okay, the amount has to be certain again, that sum of rupees 1 lakh should be paid, or whatever is the amount of the bill. Okay, specific amount has to be noted in the bill. Then the payment must be in the legal money of the country. Then it should be properly stamped also. Okay, so these are some of the conditions of the promissory note. Okay, so that's all about the basics of bills of exchange. Thank you.